So what's driving it? So we got the, it's nice to get some EU money and we get a lovely project and then we spin this council out of it, which is going to promote with businesses all this. Why do businesses want to do this?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So remanufacturing has been around for decades. It's gone on quietly in the background. So, for example, if you're traveling on a train, you wouldn't know, but there's a great company called Knorr-Bremse who take the brakes from that train and are constantly remanufacturing the braking system.
Yeah.
Why would you know about it? You buy a train ticket, you want the train to work. It's a B2B transaction, but it's a very effective way of using those components, remanufacturing them, bringing them back into good use, giving them multiple lives. But the really wasteful part of our economic activities is quite often in products that we all see, whether they're laptops, for example, or even automotive products, where very often those are collected up, smashed up, materials recycled, where the product could have a second or third life.
Are all the materials recycled, or is there a lot of loss?
There's a lot of loss in that process. So think of critical raw materials.
Yeah.
Quite often, if you take a phone or a computer product, they'll contain tiny quantities, but very important quantities of critical raw materials which are alloyed into the metals. And then what happens? Products collected at the end of life, smashed up, and those critical materials just get lost in the big melt for ferrous and non-ferrous materials. Most are lost.
Hold on. So like for a company to do this remanufacturing, it sounds like there's two big drivers. One of them, we're starting to touch on this environmental sustainability angle with, we're wasting materials, we're losing stuff, we're putting plastics into oceans, all the agenda that's going on and building around the world. But there's also this economic thing. And so are you saying when we do remanufacturing, it just makes good economic sense for a business?
Sometimes, which is why it's already happening. That 30 billion of sales in remanufacturing just simply makes sense. But how much larger could it be? That's the really interesting question, which is why I think we enjoyed the research projects we did together. The potential is enormous. And why? And what's stopping it from happening? So the linear economy, make things as cheaply as possible, get them into the hands of consumers and businesses, and at the end of life, just have them either collected for recycling, smashed up and recycling for materials, or simply lost to the environment, or into landfills or energy recovery plants. The alternative is to do something much more resource efficient, but it's difficult to do. It's more complicated to do. And so unless you set out to try to do that, you have to design the product differently, not always, but usually, different design. And then you've got new transactions going on. How do you get back the product? Who's got it? Why would they bring it back to you? And when you've got it, is there enough value left in it for you to give it a second life? So those additional risks companies can avoid altogether if they can, and just say, let's keep the flow of the linear economy going, which is why the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's leadership, I think, on the circular economy has been so helpful. We find now that big OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, are very aware of this discussion. They know their customers are expecting more of them in the future, and that's why they're coming to the European Remanufacturing Council. People like IBM, Lexmark, Volvo, interesting company, Panalpina, Syncreon, SKF, the ball bearing company. They're all companies that have joined the council to say, we can do this better. And if you take one example, IBM, they've got a really excellent remanufacturing process for their servers, cascaded reuse involved, but most importantly, they can find the maximum value in those products that they've supplied to their customers.
And I mentioned environmental issues. Because one big one is energy and carbon.
Yep.
So there's some big bonuses there with remanufacturing.
There are. So the Remade project in the United States, which involves the American Remanufacturing Council, RIC, run by Nabil Nasser, that project focuses especially on the energy efficiency benefits from remanufacturing, and we can learn a lot from that. That's one. But what I think we take from that is not only are the energy benefits really large from many remanufactured products, the material benefits, as I described, in some cases, they might seem very small, but they're important. Otherwise, we're losing all these critical raw materials every time we recycle. But I think more to the point is it leaves you with the question, why aren't those products normally collected and given a second life? What is stopping that from happening? Now,
so what is stopping it?
What is stopping it from happening? Quite often, it's inertia. We've always done it this way. The transactions are, you know, you'll often go into a company and they'll say, well, why would we do that? We currently make a great product, we sell it. Why would we want to get it back again? And then the salesman will say to you, that's going to cannibalize our sales of our new products, so we mustn't do that. That's going to be awful. And yet time and time again, we can show examples of companies who went through that doubt and discovered that actually remanufacturing gives them a whole new line of advantages for their product. And examples of that, Lexmark, with their toner cartridges in Europe, can provide you with real evidence of the benefits it gives them in providing remanufactured cartridges quickly back to their corporate customers.
There's something I've observed in the Netherlands that's taken off, and I think this is going to start to happen all over Europe and all over the world, I hope. So we know, roughly, it depends on the country, but about 20% of an economy's spend is the stuff that the government buys. We're sat in a lovely building here, part of TU Delft. Well, this is the stuff that government buys. Universities, schools, hospitals, roads, you know, the list goes on, and it's big. So what we see in the Netherlands is the government starting to say, well, we're a big purchaser, and we should move over to, for instance, sourcing, buying remanufactured product. So it strikes me that if that happens, and we're optimistic here that it'll start happening, this would be a revolutionary boost to remanufacturing activity.
I agree. Look, I think there are two themes there, Dave, which you've prompted me on, and thank you for that. That procurement process. I think there's the public sector procurement route, and then there's the profit sector procurement route. Now, the public sector procurement route is massive. Often it's very complicated to do because there are all sorts of legal constraints on what the public sector can do on procurement, and it takes a long time. But I'm optimistic that will be effective over time. I'm much more optimistic about the short-term impact that profit-based businesses can have. There are quite a nice number of examples of where sustainability teams often, or procurement people inside a profit-making business say, do you know, we could really change our supply chain. We could put in new clauses in our contracts to require companies to take the circular economy into account. And you know, it's great because there's nothing clearer than when you want to do business with another company and they say, the rules are changing, you need to change the way you work from linear to circular. Boy, does that concentrate minds.
Well, it does, and because we know, you've mentioned some world big companies, and one of the things they will say, and they do, they're consistently, we are focused on what our customers want. And if our customers are requesting circular, reman product, that is what they will deliver. Any business that tries to run and saying, I'm not actually interested in what my customers want, well, you find they don't hang around very long because they're not in business.
And if I might say so, one of the things I always say to businesses is if you want to ignore the circular economy, all well and good luck to you. But have a look at the companies on the CE 100 list from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Just take a look down that list and ask yourself, do you want to do business with those people, or even directly or indirectly